ever wondered why some startups succeed while many others fail? The answer often lies in the business model they choose to follow. Traditional business models, while proven in established markets, often fall short when applied to startups. These models operate under the assumption of business as usual, with predictable markets and known customers. But startups exist in a world of uncertainty, unknown markets, untested products, and unproven business models. In this volatile landscape, the predictability of traditional business models crumbles. The planning and forecasting methods that work well for established businesses can lead startups astray, causing them to waste resources on unvalidated assumptions. Enter the lean startup, a fresh approach that embraces this uncertainty. This methodology, pioneered by Eric Ries, gears businesses to adapt, learn, and pivot, increasing their chances of success in the unpredictable world of startups. So how does the lean startup approach handle this uncertainty? Let's dive in. So where do we begin? With a vision. It's the starting point of every successful venture, the lighthouse that guides us through the choppy waters of business. In the lean startup, Eric Ries emphasizes the critical role of vision in shaping the trajectory of a startup. When we talk about a vision, we're not simply referring to a vague idea or a lofty dream. We're talking about a clear, compelling, and actionable image of the future that a startup aspires to create. It's like a magnetic north for entrepreneurs, a beacon that guides every decision, every strategy, every product development effort. But what makes a vision compelling? It's when it resonates with your target audience, when it addresses a real problem or need, and when it promises a solution that is not only effective, but also innovative. Remember, a vision is not a one-size-fits-all blueprint. It's as unique as the startup itself. It's shaped by the entrepreneur's experiences, insights, and aspirations. It's a reflection of the unique value that the startup aims to bring to the world. However, a vision is not set in stone. It's a dynamic entity that evolves with the startup. As you learn more about your market, your customers, and your own capabilities, your vision might pivot. And that's okay. In fact, that's more than okay. That's the sign of a healthy, responsive startup that's not afraid to adapt and grow. A vision also plays a vital role in inspiring innovation. When you have a clear vision, it's like having a destination in mind. You're not just wandering aimlessly, hoping to stumble upon a great idea. You're actively exploring, experimenting, and innovating to reach that destination. It's your vision that makes your journey meaningful. It's your vision that turns your startup into a mission. So, how do you start a lean startup? You start with a vision. You start with a clear, compelling image of the future that you want to create. You start with an idea that inspires you, drives you, and guides every decision you make. With a compelling vision in place, what's the next step? The build, measure, learn cycle. Welcome to the heart of the lean startup, the build, measure, learn cycle. The build, measure, learn cycle is the engine that drives Eric Ries's lean startup methodology. It's a simple yet powerful framework designed to turn business ideas into products that people want. The first step is build. But don't let the term fool you. We're not talking about constructing a fully fledged product with all the bells and whistles. Instead, we're talking about creating a minimum viable product, often abbreviated to MVP. The MVP is a stripped-down version of your product that includes only the essential features necessary to solve a problem or meet a need for your target customers. Next, we measure. This is where we collect data on how customers respond to the MVP. We look at indicators like user engagement, repeat usage, and customer feedback. The goal is to gather as much information as possible about how the product is performing in the real world. Finally, we learn. Here, we analyze the data we've collected and draw conclusions. Did customers respond as we expected? If not, why? What worked and what didn't? These insights then feed into the next iteration of the product, taking us back to the build stage, and the cycle continues. What's beautiful about the build, measure, learn cycle is its efficiency. By focusing on a minimum viable product and learning from real-world feedback, startups can avoid the costly mistake of building a product nobody wants. It reduces waste, not just of money, but of time and effort too. Importantly, it's not a one-and-done process. The cycle repeats, each time refining the product based on real, validated learning. So here we have it, the build, measure, learn cycle. It's not just a theoretical concept, but a practical tool that entrepreneurs and innovators can use to build products that customers want. It's a step-by-step guide to learning fast, making informed decisions, and ultimately reducing the risk of failure. And what exactly are we learning? Validated learning. So, what is validated learning and why is it crucial? You might wonder. Well, validated learning is a central tenet in Eric Ries's The Lean Startup. It's a process where entrepreneurs quickly and methodically validate if a proposed business model is viable through rigorous testing and analysis. Picture validated learning as a scientific experiment. In a startup setting, you're essentially a scientist, and your business hypothesis is your experiment. You form a hypothesis about your business model, run experiments to test this hypothesis, and then analyze the data to understand the outcome. This process isn't just about validating your ideas, but also about learning what works and what doesn't in your particular business context. Now, how do you apply this in real life? Let's say you've got a hypothesis that your new mobile app will be a hit among young adults. You might launch a minimum viable product or MVP and measure how your target demographic responds. Do they download the app? Do they use it regularly? Do they recommend it to their peers? By tracking these metrics, you're gathering data to validate or invalidate your hypothesis. Through validated learning, you're not just blindly moving forward. You're learning from your actions and making informed decisions based on tangible evidence. It's about turning the unknown into the known, transforming guesswork into knowledge. And here's the most important part. Validated learning isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous process. Every new feature, every marketing campaign, every strategic decision should be subjected to this cycle of hypothesis, experiment, and learning. But what if your hypothesis is invalidated? What if your mobile app isn't catching on with young adults as you expected? That's where the concept of pivot or persevere comes in. Based on the learnings you've gathered, you might need to pivot, change your strategy or your product, or persevere, sticking to your current course but making minor adjustments. And speaking of pivoting, when should a startup pivot or persevere? That's a question we'll dive into in our next segment, so stay tuned. To pivot or to persevere? That is the question. Delving into the 5th chapter of The Lean Startup, we encounter a critical crossroads faced by every entrepreneur: to pivot or to persevere. This decision can make or break a venture, and knowing when to do what is crucial. Let's begin with understanding what a pivot is. In the startup world, a pivot means a fundamental shift in strategy. It's about keeping one foot firmly planted in what we have learned and changing the other foot's direction towards a new, potentially more successful path. It's not about throwing everything away, but about leveraging what we've learned to move in a new, more promising direction. So how do startups know when to pivot? The answer lies in validated learning. Remember the build, measure, learn cycle we discussed earlier? By continuously iterating through this cycle, startups gather invaluable insights about their product, their market, and their business model. If the metrics are not showing the expected growth or the feedback from users is persistently negative, it's a signal that something is not working. That's when the startup needs to consider a pivot. But what about persevering? Well, perseverance comes into play when there's a clear indication that the current strategy is working. If the metrics are showing positive trends and the feedback from users is encouraging, it's a sign to keep pushing forward. However, the decision to pivot or persevere is not a one-time thing. It's a continuous process. Startups need to be constantly on their toes, learning from their successes and failures, and making informed decisions. That said, the timing of this decision is equally significant. Acting too early can lead to missing out on potential success, while acting too late can result in wasted resources and missed opportunities. The key is to strike a balance, to be adaptable yet focused, to be persistent yet flexible. The decision to pivot or persevere is a testament to the startup's resilience, adaptability, and commitment to learning. So we've covered the key concepts, but how does the lean startup fit into the broader context of business innovation? Now let's talk about implementing the lean startup principles. The essence of these principles lies in 3 main actions: build, measure, and learn. Start by building a minimum viable product, a simple version of your product that allows you to test your assumptions. Next, measure how your product performs in the market using actionable metrics. Learn from these metrics and use validated learning to improve your product or pivot your strategy. To drive continuous innovation, adopt a mindset of experimentation. Embrace failure as an opportunity to learn and improve. Minimize waste by focusing your resources on what truly matters to your customers and what brings value to your business. Increasing the likelihood of success involves making informed decisions based on validated learning and actionable metrics. It requires the courage to pivot when necessary and the resilience to persevere through challenges. Remember, the lean startup is not just a methodology. It's a mindset shift towards embracing uncertainty, learning from failure, and continuously innovating for success. So, are you ready to embrace the lean startup principles?